Hi, I'm Jonathan M0JSX. Thanks for joining me in this video, and today a bit of an exciting one because we're going to have a look and a bit of a review of the Xiegu G106. Now I have to say that since this has been delivered to me, there is now a firmware update, so some of the things I'm going to reference in terms of power levels not being able to be changed with the latest firmware update you can. The only reason I haven't done the firmware update on the one I've got is that I don't have any of the correct cables to do so, which also means unfortunately I've not been able to test this with FT8 for instance either. Now of course, to do digital modes you can either use the DE19 that Xiegu sell themselves, or you could get the DigiRig with the correct cable set. Both options will work, and in fact with the DigiRig unit as well, that is also a way to do the firmware upgrade on the radio. Now I'm also going to be completely upfront and honest in another way and say that this isn't a radio I would actually buy. This has been supplied for review by Martin Lynch & Sons, but I'm not sure who this radio is targeted to, because it's certainly not targeted to me, but I'm interested to find out who it is marketed to. We'll get into that towards the end of the video, but let's hop back in time and let's have a look at the unboxing experience and what you get with it, and we'll also have a quick listen to it on air as well. So here we have the box for the Xiegu, not quite sure of the correct pronunciation. I'm going to go with Xiegu, that's how it looks like to my English speaking brain, but probably not correct in the original Chinese. Obviously it's a really nice colourful box, nice sort of blue with various digital artifacts, which I think is interesting given the fact it's got no digital sort of converter in it. In order to use FT8 you have to buy that separately, I suppose, possibly referencing the fact that it is kind of SDR based, so that might make sense, and it's running their G core, which Xiegu seems to put on everything. And we can see that it has SSB, CWAM and wideband FM. It's got a broadcast FM receiver in it, which I suppose is a nice added thing. Just go around the box, again just the same on that side. On that side, SDR core, PC control, FM radio and data modes. Again, I think the PC control of the data modes is only a little bit somewhat misleading, given the fact in order to do data modes with this radio, thing like FT8, you have to buy the separate DE19 converter, or you can use something like a DigiRig with the correct cables. I know that Gary at ML&S has got that going. Get on some of that side. Information on that side, including a serial number, and not on the bottom. Right, let's without further ado, let's open up the box and have a look at the radio itself. So pull the tab and we're opening up, and in here we have got a sort of warranty card, nice warranty card, all in Chinese, if you feel free to read that, who knows. Pop it on the side. We've also got here, that box will stay up, a qualified certificate. Not quite sure what that's about, probably some kind of QC, I imagine. Then we have one sheet in German. How's your German, everybody? I'm not quite sure about what that's all about. Information. Looks like some kind of privacy statement, not quite sure. My German's not great. And then Xiegu G106 operation manual. Very, very simple manual this. Let's have a quick flick to a random page. G106 is a 5-watt portable QRP model with SDR circuit structure, which uses, okay, it's fairly legible English, no Chinglish here. Can be easily connected to a computer and complete FT8 with the external, so this is what I'm referring to. With the external DE19 digital adapter optional, it can be easily connected to the computer and complete FT8 communication. So, yeah, it's a shame that Xiegu didn't feel the need to put that USB converter in it. And then under this panel here, we have got the radio itself. We'll come back to the radio in just a second. That lid just keeps falling. We're going to empty the box and then we can get rid of the box. We have a microphone with a really small 4-pin modular connector, which is interesting. It's kind of like an RJ11. I'm not quite sure. It looks smaller than an RJ11 actually. And then we have also a DC power cable for nominal 12 volts. What's interesting here and what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to leave this in the box because that is the same connector as you'll find on the IC705. So to save me opening up this DC cable, I'm just going to use one of the DC cables that I've already got for my 705. So I'm going to leave that in the box. I'm going to put these bits back and we'll have a quick look at the radio. So here is the radio itself. It's very nice. It's all metallized design, which I think is really nice. That's possibly one of the advantages of this over an IC705 perhaps, is the fact that it is an all metal construction. Feels very, very sturdy in the hand, and it's got a nice weight to it as well. It doesn't feel flimsy or like it's going to break. There's no sort of flex to the bodywork at all. I also like the fact that the VFO knob has got that little indentation so you can easily spin it around. That's much nicer than you'd get on, say, like an FT818 or even my 857, where it's not got much of an indentation. That's actually nice and deep and easy to get your finger into. And then also the volume control over here, but they're sort of protected. You can see they're from the sort of side profile, they're protected by these sort of, I'm going to use the word flanges, just protecting the front, and the same on the other side as well. So if the worst were to happen, say, and you were to drop the radio onto its face, it's not going to cause any damage to the front. What's interesting though is that I suppose it does give a little bit, I'm just having a look, it does give a little bit of protection to the screen as well. Not an awful lot. Certainly if you were to drop this onto a surface which is not flat, then that's not going to provide any protection whatsoever. It's a nice little screen as well, and then you've got the 4 buttons along the bottom. And then down here you've got your port for your speaker microphone, and yes, speaker microphone we'll come into in a second. Nothing on the bottom apart from some SEC and CE certification. On the back, I've got a BNC for the antenna. We've got an earthing port as well, which is nice to see just on a little thumb screen. We've got a 3.5mm key socket, so that's for CW, and I believe it's got an inbuilt key as well, so you can either use, let's just say, a paddle key, or you can use a straight key. Then you've got COM and accessory. Now I believe that COM handles things like your CAT control, and then the accessory that looks like 8-pin socket you would connect up to for audio. So if you were to purchase separately that DE19 interface, or if you were to buy something like a DigiRig and have the cables for that, it would plug into those 2 ports there. And then obviously DC input on the back. And interestingly, you can give the radio anything between 9 and 16 volts. That's quite a wide range. I suspect that if you give it sort of 13.8 or 12 volts from a battery, that's going to keep it nice and happy. Next thing we'll do is have a quick look at the microphone. So this is the supplied microphone for the G106. Now I have to say that this feels very much and seems very much like the kind of speaker microphones you expect for things like books and radios or Baofengs or those kind of relatively inexpensive VHF, UHF handhelds. In fact, it probably is, just with a different connector on the end of it. It works very nicely. I mean, it does feel particularly cheap, but I'm not going to hold that against it. The whole radio is relatively cheap, and actually it does what it says on the tin. The speaker microphone, the speaker in it works very well. I've already used it. It does have a port on the bottom, and that's a 3.5mm socket, so you could plug let's say an earpiece into that should you want to, or you can use either the speaker in the microphone or the speaker in the top of the radio itself. And this is one of the things I think has been interesting about this radio, is that we're so used to radios. I mean, I've got my 705 off to my side here as well, and that of course has a separate speaker socket. So if I wanted to, I can plug an external speaker directly into the radio. With the G106, there is no external speaker socket. So if I wanted to use an external speaker, I assume, and I haven't tested it yet, that I would have to plug in the microphone and then plug in my external speaker into that 3.5mm on the microphone. Not very elegant, not particularly brilliant, not too enamoured with that. But again, let's just bear in mind the price of the radio and ultimately what this is targeted to, which is going out portable. You're probably not going to be taking an external speaker with you anyway. The internal speaker is probably going to be just fine, or if it's not, then the speaker microphone, and you can hold that up to your ear in order to receive. I've now got the radio plugged into DC power from my 13.8 volt power supply, so I can press and hold that on button and the radio will come on. It gives a nice splash screen of Xiegu and immediately comes on to 20 meters, and we can also hear the speaker as well. And I'm just going to hold that up because as I turn it, there's a click that's audible to me. Now, that could just be that I haven't got an antenna plugged in at the moment, and therefore if you had sort of some received noise coming through, you wouldn't hear that. Just worth noting that that does exist. Across the top, we have, of course, that power button. If you were to press it while it's on, it turns the backlight off. So if you were working from a battery source, that would be nice in order to preserve some battery. Probably not going to save an awful lot. I imagine that's just an LED backlight, but it's nice that it's there. Then got the pre and mode button. So if we press that very sort of a quick press, it cycles through the modes of operation. If we give it a long press, then it's going to knock in or out the preamp. And you can see that's indicated by that P on the screen coming on and off. Again, a nice click. It's coming from the speaker, not quite sure what that's about. And then we have the band up and down buttons. So if we were to press very quickly, obviously you can cycle through the amateur bands, and in the menu you can change this from changing just through the amateur bands or changing through all of the shortwave bands as well. If we were to give a long press on it, we can move the tuning steps. So you can see when it first came on, I'm tuning in 1K steps. I can change that, so I'm changing 100th of a kilohertz all the way down to sort of 1 hertz. That's nice to see that feature as well. Personally, I quite like tuning in 1K steps, and then changing, then sort of going down for more granularity just there should I need to. If say someone's on sort of, I don't know, 270.5 for instance. And pressing both at the same time will lock the radio, so press and hold and that lock comes on, so that way I'm not going to accidentally knock anything. I'll turn that off. By pressing in on the VFO brings up the menu system, and this is it. There's no hidden menus that I'm aware of. I'm not going to go through all of these menu options, but you can kind of get a flavour as to what they are just by their abbreviation. I know there's plenty of other YouTubers have already looked at this radio and already gone in depth as to what those options are. One thing I do want to just change though is the display, because I would quite like to have a big scope. So I'm going to have big scope, and then if I press that, I can see a larger representation of the scope. But I'm going to see if I can also have big scope plus an S meter. I'm not quite sure if I can. No, I can't. I can have big scope but no S meter. Okay, I'll do that then. So that's kind of the radio's operation. There's not much more to it than that. Let's now have a few QSOs on it and let's see what we think. Roger, Roger, thank you. You are 59001, number 1 QSL. Mike 0, Juliet Sierra X-ray.
Mike 0, Juliet Sierra X-ray, you 5909114.
Roger, thank you. 59002 QSL.
Thank you for number 2 QSL. Spirit Delta Lima 4, Radio Charlie Echo.
Mike 0, Juliet Sierra X-ray. Mike 0, Juliet Sierra X-ray.
Yeah, Roger, Mike 0, Juliet Sierra X-ray, you're 59 X-ray 35.
Roger, thank you. 59003 QSL.
Number 3 is in the lock, QRZ, Delta Golf 1, Alpha Tango November.
So there we have it, the Xiegu G106
It works very nicely. I can't complain at all. It's nicely made. It feels nice in the hand. It's got that nice knob on the front as well. The microphone, I think, does, to be honest, leave something to be desired. I mean, it functions, it works, it sounds okay. However, let's put all of this into context. We're looking at a radio which often is on sale for less than £300. Certainly during some of the Black Friday events that were happening a week or so ago, they were as low as sort of £275. So in terms of bang for buck, I think they're excellent. But this is where I want to get into it. Who is this marketed to? Because I think if you're new to the hobby, you might very well be interested in something this size that puts out sort of between 5 and 10 watts, because if you're a foundation license holder in the UK, you're limited to 10 watts. But I don't think this is the right radio for that, because I think I've always said that buying a QRP radio when you're a foundation license holder, if you only intend to ever be a foundation license holder, then great, you're all set. If you have aspirations of maybe getting your intermediate or maybe even your full license eventually, buying a radio like the G106, but also applies to things like the FT817, FT818 and indeed the IC705, you kind of get yourself into a position where you're then limited by the power output of your radio, not by your license level. And this isn't a knock against QRP operating at all. I happen to also like QRP, but it's also nice for me to have, for instance, the IC7300, to know that if I want to, I can twiddle a button and turn it up to 100 watts out. So in that regard, I don't think this makes a very good starter radio. Well then, is it maybe designed for someone who wants to go out backpacking with it? Well, maybe, it could be. I mean, it is nice and small, very portable, but then it hasn't got an internal battery, so it already has that sort of downside against maybe the 817 or the 818 or indeed the 705. And I know those radios are limited by power when you're only running an internal battery, but at least they've got them. So with the G106, you have to take a battery with you as well. Okay. No internal tuner. That doesn't bother me if I'm going out portable. I tend to run resonant antennas using a 49:1 and a half wavelength of wire for 40 meters. So that doesn't bother me at all either. But then it's also quite heavy. And again, it's probably about the same weight as a 705. But with the 705, it does a lot more, and I've also got 270 on it as well. But then that price comes back into it. So I'm going around in circles here, and I'm not quite sure who this is targeted to. Is it targeted to you? And please get into the comments, please, because this is, I want to have a conversation about this, is who is the person who's buying the G106? And I'm very curious to know. I think it's a lovely radio. I think it works well. I think it's very good value for money. It's not for me, but is it for you? Please do let me know. There's another video coming up just over here. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. 73. Bye bye.